You're listening to the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast, where we talk about hunting, politics, sports, and everything in between. Now, here's your host, Steve West.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. And as many of you know, the United States-Canadian border has been closed for almost a year. American hunters were unable to travel into Canada for right about a year. I think it was about mid-March last year when we closed the border. I shouldn't say we closed the border, but the United States and Canadian governments closed the border. And, you know, last year, the 2020 seasons, both spring and fall, were lost entirely. Outfitters and guides in Canada have lost millions of dollars in revenue, and American hunters are frustrated. Global hunters really are frustrated. They can't travel to Canada. Canadians can't travel into the United States. I mean, it's a two-way street, but really, the guys that are trying to get to Canada, that's the big deal. I mean, that's the Canadian tourism industry is heavily dependent on American dollars. And for us, that most directly means outfitters and guides. Hunting and fishing camps are lacking American dollars coming in. And Canada is suffering during this pandemic financially. The tourism industry is. And it's a hot topic right now. Once again, this week, I'm joined in the studio by Travis Price from our office. Travis is a professional hunting guide and hunting consultant. Travis is on the front lines of having these discussions with our clients on a daily basis. I mean, guys are calling in constantly. We have hundreds of clients, and some of them right now are sitting on their hands, and they're waiting for border news. And to help us understand the situation, both at the border, both from the perspective of the outfitters and guides in Canada, is Scott Ellis. Scott's the director of the Guide Outfitter Association of British Columbia, and he's going to be joining us shortly. So personally, I'm proud of the way the hunting and fishing clients that we had last year, Travis, treated us and handled this situation. When we informed everybody in March, hey, the border's closed, we really didn't know if it was just going to be closed for 30 days, 60 days. I mean, if you remember, it was kind of a week-to-week, month-to-month thing there for a while before we realized it was completely screwed, right?
Totally. And I remember we were hopeful like every month at a time. Maybe in July it's going to open. Then it was September and then October. And here we sit the following year and it's still closed. So
well, but I mean, I remember in March we were thinking, well, this thing will be over with in April. Yeah, this isn't going to be anything. It'll be over with in April. And let's just get our clients in the field. We thought the May and June seasons were going to happen. Everybody waited till the last second. We know how that ship sailed. It didn't. It sank to the bottom of the ocean, and then the fall season followed directly thereafter. Mm-hmm. But honestly, if you think about it, out of all the clients we had lots of conversations. We got out in front of it with that video series, talking to people about the border, whether it was the spring seasons or the fall seasons. Out of all the hundreds of clients, we had maybe one or two assholes. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, 99.9% of the clients were very understanding of the situation. And, it takes a really, strong person to realize there's a bigger picture here. And it's not always just about ourselves and the money that we have placed down in an individual, hunt in this case. And they've just been our clients have just been outstanding and just completely understanding and just going with the flow. It's all any of us can do at this point.
Really, we're just on the ship. We're pirates on the ship and it's sailing. That's it. Yeah. What are you hearing from people now? Now we're in year number 2. You're on the phone with guys. I think it's starting to become apparent that there may or may not be an upcoming spring season. Yep. What are you hearing from our clients on a daily basis in terms of questions and their comments? I mean, what's the temperature you're taking right now? Are they still good? Yeah,
still good. I think there's definitely some built up frustration. For the most part, our clients want to go on these hunts, and it's being built up to the point where they're probably, cabin fever at home throughout the pandemic, and they just want to get out on these hunts that they've had scheduled in some cases, over a year or 2 years now at that point, and they really want to get out. So I'm getting a lot of that feedback, and I completely understand that. And I get a lot of questions, asked personally, when do I think that the border's, going to be open so I can go on my hunt? And that's a difficult question to handle and to answer right now, because the reality is we just don't know.
We haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
It's out of our hands entirely. And hopefully Scott will be able to discuss some of that.
That's what I was just going to say. Scott will give us some good insight on that. And, for the most part, just to reiterate, everybody's been understanding and is continually being understanding. So I
think that speaks to the quality of the people in the outdoor community, not the outdoor industry, the outdoor community. Hunters and fishermen in general are understanding, quality people, and they're going with the flow. Honestly, it's so far out of all of our hands what's happening at the border. There's no chance whatsoever that you or I have any influence on if that border opens or not.
Exactly.
And like I said, we've had maybe one or two a-holes that were like demanding refunds and to hell with the outfitters, and that's their, financial loss and their problems. Well, it's everybody's problem. It's a global problem.
Yep.
It's not just a Steve's Outdoor Adventures problem or a Bob Smith problem or an Outfitter XYZ problem. Yep. We're all in this boat together, and really, I think that the outdoor community has shown its true colors.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll be right back from this short commercial message. We got to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have Scott Ellis from GOABC on the phone with us. And he's got some great things to say. I know it because he's the tip of the spear when it comes to dealing with this border crossing issue, and hopefully he's got some fresh insight.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Bergara Rifles, where the people truly make the difference.
Welcome back to the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. I'm on the phone right now with Scott Ellis, the director of the Guide Outfitter Association of British Columbia. Scott's a great voice for outfitters and guides in British Columbia, and he's on the front lines of the COVID-19 border closure issue. And Scott, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Steve.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, I've been telling people for a while now that if anybody was going to be at the tip of the spear on this issue, it was going to be you guys at GOABC, because really, your outfitters and guides are some of the most active in all of Canada, and I can only imagine that people are wearing you out with this issue left and right. I mean, Scott, I love British Columbia, okay? I mean, from the Purcell Wilderness in southeast British Columbia to the headwaters of the Prophet River, up at the glacier, the big bridge at the Liard River. British Columbia is beautiful, it's diverse, and I'm dying to get back up there. Before we talk about the border closure, tell us and our listeners about your job with GOABC and what makes British Columbia so special for you.
Wow. Thanks. I appreciate that. And I've, in my past life, I had the opportunity to travel, and I've been to some pretty cool places, but, I don't think there's much that beats our mountains, our fresh air, just clean and crisp air. It's kind of a weird thing when you come home and just, I don't know, just the crispness of the air. It's just something special. We've got almost 1 million square kilometers. Sorry for your U.S. Folks, I'm not sure how to do the math on what that looks like.
It's called a shitload.
Square miles, but it's bigger than many European countries, right? So, and we're blessed. I think that we've got some, pretty rugged and remote places, and allows our wildlife to thrive and be abundant, and gets us the opportunity to chase some crankers, and that's really what gets my heart going. And yeah, it's a beautiful place, right? And we've had a great year, and internally, not so much on the revenue. The bottom line doesn't look so good.
Yeah. When you start talking about how big British Columbia is, you were saying it's 1 million, square kilometers. I translate that to people in the United States when they ask how big British Columbia is. I just call it a shitload of square miles of beautifulness. And when you cross the border at the Sumas border crossing, if you're going to drive all the way through to Whitehorse, that's about 650 cups of coffee, 10 piss breaks, and at least one overnight, unless you're just a road warrior of a driver, right? I mean, it's a go-getter of a trip.
Puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Just around that, a buddy of mine got drawn north of Atlan, so that's a northwest point of British Columbia for caribou, and caribou is on my bucket list. And so we were talking about going, and I was just going to come and basically, be the packer, and happy to do that. And between his schedule and my schedule, and then we looked, well, it's 3 days to get there driving. 3 days back, that's 6, you know what I mean? And I'm like, this is terrible. Like, we can't actually fit this in. So, it's a big province.
You need an airplane at that point in time. Yes,
yeah, for sure. And in this vast, country, we we have 18 of the North American 29, and then when you include some of our brothers to the north in the Northwest Territories and the Yukon, who we work with really closely, that's it's another 5 species. So we've got we've got pretty good game populations and a pretty wide variety, and if you're fortunate enough, you can come and get a chance to harvest multiple species on one trip.
Oh, yeah. I did a trip back in 2008 where I went up to Whitehorse and did a Dall sheep grizzly hunt. And then I drove back to like Fort Nelson area into the Prophet River area and did a 2-week hunt there. And I actually got to see the seasons change 3 times, but because I saw the season change at the 1st of September, all the colors changed in Whitehorse up there at the Kluane Lake. And then I drove down to the Prophet, and while I was there, I watched all the colors change again in the middle of September. And by the time I got back home here, my larch trees went from green to yellow. I got to see the seasons change 3 times between the last week of August, first week of September, and that first week of October here. It was the most amazing thing. But the diversity of terrain and all of the different animals, and it's just super scenic and beautiful. In fact, so joining us on the call here is Travis Price from our office. And Travis is actually from Kamloops, eh? Yeah. And Travis, what's your favorite part of British Columbia? I mean, you grew up there. Why is what's your favorite part and why?
And that's a tough question to answer because I have a lot of history there. I was born in Clearwater, which is kind of in the central part in the Thompson area. Went to high school in Kamloops and went on my first hunt, killed my first animal, first elk hunt. But if I had to choose or go on one final hunt in my life, it would be in northern British Columbia for sure. In the Peace region, just for the simple fact of how remote it is, how breathtakingly beautiful, definitely easy to get away from other people, and just the abundance of game, like Scott was mentioning. I mean, it's just an overall such a special place.
Well, yeah.
But I do have family in Southeast BC, outside of Cranbrook, and that's another special area. And I could go on and on about all these.
You can always take pops with you,
Yeah. But northern BC, there's just something special about it.
Yeah. And Scott, you get to represent a membership, an organization with a membership that is made up greatly of what I consider to be some of the best outfitters and guides in North America, because for the most part, these exclusive guide territories in British Columbia are not something that you just go pick up for nothing. I mean, they're worth a lot of money. They cost a lot of money. They're operations that take a lot of money to run. So these are people that have, some financial means, or at least, good business sense for the most part. You're not just going to be any hillbilly with a guide territory in British Columbia. I mean, kind of talk to us about the business aspect of some of this.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So, we represent about 180 businesses in the province. So you have to opt in to join. You pay to be a member of GABC. You sign a code of conduct. You sign up that, if something goes sideways, because, remote countries and, potentially tough weather and firearms and dangerous game, sometimes things go sideways. That you'll make it right with your client. And so I think we got the best of the best that are members. We're fortunate, I don't know what that is, 65, 70% of the folks who are members. And, some guide areas have turned recently and, they were, north of $4 million, $5, $6, $7 million. And in light of COVID, in a year where you have no revenue, guide territories are still... some of the most expensive ones in the province are still selling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember talking to our friend. I'm sure you consider Leif Olson a friend as well, right? I mean, he grew up down here, not 45 minutes from where I'm talking to you. And
oh, good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we go back a long time. And I remember talking to Leif in January. He didn't say a thing to me, and it probably wasn't on his radar at the moment. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to him in March. And he says, "Oh, by the way, I sold Stone Mountain Safaris to another very capable operator who we've worked with for years in Blair Miller, with Folding Mountain." And I thought, holy cow. And then 2 weeks later, the border closes. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, God, Blair, you poor bugger, because I know that wasn't a cheap area.
Oh no, it wasn't, and I think that it speaks to the the long-term vision you need to have in an outfitting business, right? And
Oh, yeah.
it's not for the faint of heart. And you got people that don't like what we do, and they picket and have signs and do stuff on social media that well, in some cases is illegal, right? And and you have a whole host of issues to work with, and you have to be a jack of all trades. And so it's a special breed of people, and they're entrepreneurs, and Lord willing, we'll get through this.
Oh, of course, of course. You talk about picketers and stuff. Funny story. Years ago, when Kevin Olmsted had the Queen Charlotte Islands area,
Yep.
I went out there to hunt with him. I think that was in 2008 too, incidentally. Anyway, we went out there, and there was a picketer that was wearing a bear outfit and holding up a sign that said, "If I was white, you wouldn't shoot me." And of course, he was referring to a Kermode bear, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Of course, there was a little undertone racial statement there, but I remember stopping and informing the guy that, "Hey, man, I would love to hunt polar bears." And funny, he wasn't there the next day. Anyway, we had to shut that down.
I mean, in that particular area, that was kind of my baptism by fire. That's when I joined GOABC. This was I come from a Fortune 500 company, and I'd been there a long time, think about 17 years, and traveled a lot and seen a lot, and had quite a extensive territory to manage with quite a few employees. And I was coming to this little nonprofit, with just a handful of employees, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do in the afternoons? I'm going to golf every day. Wow, my golf game will be good. Let me tell you, I had no idea about the intricacies of wildlife management and government, and what outfitters are up against, and their challenges, and I thought I'd be here a couple of years, and I just saw on LinkedIn I just passed my 13th birthday here at GOABC, and I got a lot of work to do yet. So
yeah, as I say, 2008 to now, and that means that you were at the front lines kind of with the whole Haida situation out there on the islands and how they wanted to shut down the hunting, and and it's same thing Milligan ran into it until he sold the area to him, and now that particular community loves hunting, and it's funny how things change, but I can only imagine the twists and turns and, like you said, intricacies of your position there. You've got so many. You and I were talking the other day just in passing, and you were mentioning like how many guide territories are owned by First Nations, bands. Was it?
Yep.
Like 20 something?
Yeah, and so the Haida Nation bought the homesteads out of the Queen Charlottes, now Haida Gwaii, right? So they bought those guide territories. And so the Niska bought Bob Milligan, so that's the largest guide territory. I think it's 26,000 square kilometers. So it's a big stake. And First Nations are buying in every year, and we're north of 30 First Nations owned guide territories in the province of British Columbia, and we're proud of that. Outfitting started with the Tall Tan in Dease Lake, specifically Telegraph Creek. That family is still in outfitting today, which is really cool. And, we expect more First Nations to continue to, buy guide areas as they see these opportunities and how it aligns with the values that they have in their culture and their history. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Kind of goes back into we're all in this together.
Yeah. Diversity is not a bad thing. Honestly, it's not. It's as long as everyone, like you said, has the core values align somewhat with each other to where we can all be in the same boat rowing in the same direction, then it works. So, well, I'll tell you what, Scott, we've got to take a quick break. Got to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back because I want to talk about the border closure. I know that's a hot topic right now, and I really want to educate our listeners and viewers as to what they need to expect and understand the truths. And I know you, like I said, you're at the tip of the spear when it comes to dealing with this situation for outfitters and guides in British Columbia. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Pendleton Ammunition. Hand-loaded, one round at a time.
All right, welcome back to the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. I'm here with Scott Ellis and Travis Price. And Scott, let's jump right into it. Now we're back. The number one question everyone's dying to ask is, will the border reopen this year in time for spring bear season? There's your $1 million question.
No. And I'll give you the e-transfer number for my account.
You know, I hear
you. Know, it. I field this question dozens of times a day, and I guess maybe some of your listeners, don't get the answer they want from their outfitter, and they figure that I'll have a better answer. Well, I'm telling your outfitter the same thing, and I'm telling you as you call, right, is that, there's two things that we see. One, regardless of what you think about a vaccine, I'm going to tell you that without a vaccine, you're not coming in 21 to Canada.
Yeah.
So, what does that look like? If you look at Destination British Columbia, which is basically a crown entity that does marketing for the province, they're forecasting, recovery for international markets, kind of somewhere between July and then a pessimistic would be like January 2022. And, it's when you look at that and then you look at where we are with vaccines, and the U.S. is far ahead on their rollout of the vaccine program than British Columbia is for sure. And we're hopeful that we get some robust supply numbers here in March. We can start moving through our phases, and then then government will be a little bit more comfortable to talk to us about some kind of safe traveler program. And I haven't talked to a politician about a safe traveler program, since before lunch. And we're talking to anybody that'll listen in the provincial government and the federal government, because it's a joint decision. The long and the short of it is we have a chance for the fall. But I think that chance is going to be centered around the rollout of the vaccine, and whether or not we like it or not, I think that the Canadian rollout will play a part, and that international clients that have the vaccine and get tested at the border, those are the first cohort that will get across.
Got it. Just curious, this is a question for you that I just had some clients from Alberta they just flew to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico for a vacation and went home.
Mm-hmm.
How can someone fly from Canada to Mexico, do a vacation and fly home? That's not essential travel. I mean, is this just a U.S.-Canada border thing where you guys can travel to other countries? I mean, what's going on with that?
I guess I'm going to tell you that there's a bunch of, I don't know if you want to call them loopholes or not, but there's some permeability around some of the rules. And so I'm not sure how they flew to Mexico, because they can't fly there on a Canadian airline, because the Canadian government passed a rule, a restriction, a law that Canadian carriers can't go to Mexico and south, and into the Caribbean, etc. So that would have to be a U.S. carrier. And today, if I want to, let's see. So a friend of mine, Horseshoe Creek Outfitters out of Hudson's Hope, so it's in the piece, saw him Wednesday at Vancouver International Airport. There's me and him and two other folks in an international airport. I don't know how many thousands of people go through there a day or an hour normally. It was a ghost town. Yeah. And he was flying to Texas. And so, he had to have his test. Got on the plane, and the next day, and so he'll be landing in Dallas. So we can't drive across headed south into the United States, but we can fly. Coming back, there's a whole set of rules for Canadians coming back, and as of Monday, there's a $800 a day mandatory quarantine in a specified hotel with armed guards, kind of like the New Zealand model. And if you get a negative test, both before you get on the plane within 72 hours, and when you land at this, at this hotel, wherever that's going to be, then you can go home. So essential travel has an exclusion. You can come back and forth, but recreational travel, where we're classified, to come to hunt, for tourism, for fishing, not so much.
Stone sheep are essential. I'm just saying, stone sheep hunting is essential.
So Scott, I have a quick question. So I guess essentially, is this all working? Because there's a lot of rules and regulations in place to keep Canadian citizens safe, and healthy, is what I'm gathering out of this. And is it actually working? Because there's a lot of, especially financial impact to do so, but is it actually working in terms of the numbers of COVID-related, just straight up deaths, I guess?
Yeah, and you know what? There's a lot of different opinions on COVID and where it came from and how fatal it is, and whether or not these precautions are working or not. And in the long run, I guess we'll be able to look back and say what worked and what didn't. I don't think we learned from SARS. I think we kind of tools down and said, "Woof, that won't happen again." It did, and I don't, and I hopefully when COVID-19 is behind us, hopefully we've learned from it. And I don't know whether or not these variants make a difference or not. Obviously, they're more contagious, but all these questions around the vaccine and the efficacy and the different kinds of vaccines, and all these restrictions and lockdowns. Yeah, I don't know. I try not to worry about the things I can't control. I got enough to worry about.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20, and that's how when we're going to learn is when we see what actually transpired. And like you said, hopefully we learn it better than we did with SARS, and we learn it and figure it out before COVID-23 hits or something, and hopefully we can be more proactive as a society. Let me ask this, Scott. What do you tell hunters that have paid an outfitter deposit? Let's say they're going to miss a second straight spring hunt, or maybe a second fall hunt, and they want their refund. I think a lot of guys don't understand that this is our business, whether it's us as the booking agency and the hunting consultants on this end of the deal, or the outfitters and guides as the business owners on the other. And this is how we pay our bills. What are you telling? I'm sure there's hunters calling you, pissing in your ear about this and that. What are you telling somebody when they call and complain to you about outfitters and deposits and things of that nature?
Yeah, I get lots of those. And what I'm trying to do around those is de-escalate them a little bit and provide a perspective that maybe some of the traveling hunters don't have, or to the same degree. And I guess number one is that the rolling border closures are on 30-day increments. So regardless of what line of business you're in, you think of a business with no revenue for a year, and now it's going to be a year and a half at least. So think about that for a minute. And then, as that starts to sink in, then, you're not able really to cut your costs because, you had to feed horses all winter. You had to insure your planes. You had to hire guides. You were in the mountains. You were ready to go. And you had vested your time in making sure you were going to deliver the quality hunt that you'd sold your client. So you have a bunch of operational costs that you spent, and then you have COVID, And so, I'm not aware of anyone giving refunds. And some say, well, we shouldn't take a refund. We should just roll it over. And what I try to explain to people, what does that mean when you talk about rolling it over? Because if you just roll it forward, you're assuming that the outfitter is going to take, or you're asking the outfitter to take 100% of the impact. And, I don't know, but that's not how we share, not in my world. So, how do we make sure that we get through this, that we have people understand that it's not the outfitter's fault, it's not the client's fault? How do we help the outfitter through, knowing that he hasn't had any revenue for a year and a half and he has a whole bunch of costs? And not only that, I don't know how many folks have been on planes or whatever, and I've been on many, and too many that I like to think of that have been canceled, and you don't bump the guy on the next flight. So some countries don't have quotas. Some species, even in British Columbia, don't have quota. It's not a big deal. If the outfitter has the guides and the infrastructure, he can take more the next year. Most of our species are on quota, and to date, government has said no to rolling the quota forward. I mean, those conversations are going on, and we're looking for some kind of help with, that's one part of the recovery. But to date, they can't get that back. So most of them are full for more than a year out. So they're sprinkling in these clients that didn't come in 2020, hopefully that can come in 2021. But if they don't in 2021, my goodness, now we're trying to find a home for all these folks. So, we need some patience, and we need to understand that the outfitters has some costs. And, we're asking the clients to understand you need to share in that somewhat, or expect to. And if your outfitter is in a position that he's able to roll over 100% of your deposit, hallelujah. Give him a high five and thank him for it, because most can't afford to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, most of what we've been seeing is it seems like everybody is, like you're saying, you don't bump somebody off the next flight, but it seems like the hunters as a whole have been really good to work with. And like last year when 2020 rolled to 21, all the 21 hunters were willing to roll to 22, and the 22 hunters were willing to roll to 23. And we've been able to create a snowball, at least with our clients and the outfitters that we've been working with, kind of create a snowball effect that rolls downhill. And hopefully the cash flow from people paying their final balances and some fresh bookings coming in for further down the line help carry these outfitters, on, until this, until there's a full recovery at some point down the line. But I think the disconnect, Scott, is that a lot of these guys look at these trips as their vacation, and they treat the outfitters and guides as they would like a cruise ship. Like, well, I didn't get to use my cruise, give me a refund. Well, this isn't $1 trillion cruise industry. This is this is an outfitter that has to, like you said, feed the horses and things like that. And we have to look at this as a business and run everything as a business, not as your vacation.
And the reality is no one that hunts or fishes or whatever it may be wants to see these top-end outfits go out of business. I mean, that's just can be devastating to what we all believe and love to do. And so looking at the bigger picture is critical here.
Yeah. Scott, what do you think the honest odds are, and I mean, I get it. We're talking about the vaccine and seeing numbers go down and things getting better and whatnot before anybody knows. But what do you think the honest odds are that we get a fall 21 season in Canada? And maybe it's not an August, September thing. Maybe it's a November, December, maybe it's the light whitetail, mule deer type seasons. Kind of talk to me about the fall and what you think that the kind of the real odds are.
Oof.
And I won't hold you to anything.
Your listeners will, though.
No, they're listening to me right now. Nobody take this literally. Yeah, anybody takes it literally is a moron. But just
to be honest, Steve, I think we'll have a really good insight into that by this summer. What are the odds on that? It's going to be tight, to be honest. So if we're talking I don't know, maybe 50-50. I don't, depending if everything aligns, then I think we got a good chance. And if things get delayed or stalled or whatever goes sideways with variants or issuance and execution of putting vaccines in people's arms or whatever, I think 50-50. It's really no better than that, and that's for the fall.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we got a couple more topics we need to talk about when we come back from this short message from our sponsors. Scott, I want to talk to you a little bit more about maybe some of the help that the outfitters and guides might be getting or not getting, from the governments. A couple of ideas I've gotten. I'd love to talk to you about the grizzly bear situation in British Columbia. We'll be right back from this short commercial break.
This segment of the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast is sponsored by Burris Optics. Find what matters.
All right, we're back here at the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast, and we're having a great talk with Scott Ellis from GOABC. Scott, man, you've had a lot of information for us on the U.S.-Canada border closure. We've talked about this wonderful province. One of the things I guess I wanted to find out was, in the United States, we've been blessed. A lot of small businesses have had things like PPP, for payroll protection programs and cheap government loans. And, man, there's been grants and all sorts of stuff rolled out. I mean, I think the world sees the news of the United States wants to give everybody a bunch of money to keep them in business and spur the economy. Are you guys getting any help whatsoever at the provincial or government level for outfitters and guides? Anything at all?
We are, and so GOABC has a 4-point plan that we're working towards, and so the first part of that is what we call is crown fees. So it's the province. We pay a bunch of user fees to operate the outfitting businesses. We pay for different licenses and leases and stuff like that, and license of occupation on our cabins and stuff like that. So we were able to get some of those fees waived, basically because we didn't use them. Some of the rod day fees we didn't have to pay or only paid what you used. So we were able to get some traction there. In the scheme of things, it's a little, but every little bit helps. Around grant and aid, also, yes. The federal government came up with something called the CEBA, so that's a Canadian emergency business account. So it's a $60,000 loan, and if you 2 years, I believe, interest free, and then you can keep 20 if you pay back on schedule. So those that wanted to take a loan, and then there's some other zero interest loans or low interest loans that are back that people can take. Those not as much aid as you might think. There's something was called the CERB. It's now ended, but it's the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. So that was $2,000 a month. That helped a little bit. And then now our province here. So those two programs were federal. So the provincial program is the small and medium-sized business recovery grant. So that's up to $25,000, $30,000, depending on your business. But you start adding it all together, and in a business used to gross, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800,000. You get $2,000 a month here, and waive a few fees there, and $25,000 here. I mean,
it's chicken scratch.
That's not what I was going to say, but it's not much. And so the combination of all of these things, like being able to carry some quota forward, if our First Nations are happy with what that law model looks like, if the resident hunting community understands that this is not a change really in allocation, but part of a recovery, and we can do that in a conservation, model that we're comfortable with, that's got some rigor around it, that's transparent, and that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Then folks will. Having a loan doesn't help you because if you don't make the payment, right? So, there are some. So, and those we do appreciate those from the province or from the federal government, but it's just a drop in the bucket of where we are.
Well, and I mean, once again, you know, I'm trying to throw some perspective on things, because I had a client the other day that said, boy, I hope some of those guys in Canada are, you know, these outfitters are getting some of this PPP to, you know, and some of these grants and, you know, recovering millions of dollars. And I was like, dude, I don't think they're getting anything. They're not getting anything like PPP. These, you know, the Americans need to be feeling pretty blessed, because, I mean, honestly, we've received a lot compared to what we should have. Stimulus checks. I mean, you name it. And, you know, I mean, look at our unemployment programs for people that aren't working. I mean, honestly, the American, you know, public needs to thank the government for this massive free handout that's been flowing to a lot of people. And the reality is this: the outfitter and guides of British Columbia and all across Canada are in the forefront of the tourism industry in Canada. And I worry that sometimes politicians don't see it that way, that they see them as just a bunch of redneck hunters that are taking people out to kill stuff or catch stuff, and that they're not part of the tourism industry, and they are. I think I saw a statistic on your website where the average hunter spends more per day in tourism dollars in the province than any other tourist that visits British Columbia, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Of course, it doesn't take long to add up to that when you're on 40,000 or stone sheep hunt. But I mean, the reality is that not all the hunts are spent like that. But I mean, honestly, it's a message I think it's got to get directly passed along to everyone, is that outfitters and guides are a big part of the tourism industry in Canada, and we need to do everything we can to support them. You know,
there's one other piece that, Steve, I want to add is that, it's that to put this in perspective, you know, in the province of British Columbia, we had 3,750 non-resident hunters. So that's non-resident of Canada that came to the province to hunt. And 93% of them were basically American. And so we went from 3,750 to 700. And there was some Americans that were able to get in. So, that number, plummeted to, 28%. So, a couple hundred got here. And so we're able to get in through some kind of rules around essential service and then stay in quarantine and then hunt, or we're here before the lockdowns. But I mean, that's an enormous impact. So number one, and number two, because of these contracts that we're talking about and the loyalty that our membership has to their clients, they don't want to cancel the contract. And when the borders are rolling forward in these 30-day, kind of blocks of time, it doesn't allow them to say, okay, love to have you come, Steve. It's not going to happen this year. We're going to book you next year. We're going to free up your spot. I'm going to sell it to a Canadian. Well, we don't know if the border is going to open or not. And we like our clients. We want our clients to keep coming. So you don't want to bust those contracts. Sure. And so it really was a barrier to pivot, was these 30-day rolling closures that just provided uncertainty for both the traveling hunter, the traveling angler, as well as the outfitting community.
And we're all eternally optimistic that next month that border is going to be open and we're going to be up there. I mean, I remember that last year, literally waiting for the news to come out. Oh man, maybe tomorrow we're going to find out that the border is going to open up in a few days.
Yeah, the 21st of every month.
They got kicked in the balls every single month. It was horrible. So, well, hey, let's talk about one of my passion projects. I mean, it's I love to spread the word about the grizzly bear situation in British Columbia. I had the benefit of having my face on some posters with people marching in Vancouver. I had somebody send me a picture of that I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago when it closed. And I was just I was beaming with pride that I had made a poster on a protest, It's one of those things where when I sit back and look at it, I see just poor information, emotion-based decision-making, things of that nature. Talk to us about this grizzly bear hunting closure in British Columbia. Do you think that that's ever going to reopen? Do you think that's ever going to flip?
I mean, I'm an optimist, so I think, in the future there is a window. There's there's a chance that'll flip. We have more grizzly bears than we've ever had. We have increased density and range. So what I mean by that is, I grew up on Vancouver Island. We get documented 20 grizzly bears on the north end of Vancouver Island. Never had them before. Never. And apparently not in hundreds of years. So we now have them in Squamish, getting closer to Vancouver. We now have them in Harrison Lake, so getting closer to Vancouver. It's
so
just,
Scott, are you saying
it's not the biology? It's not the sustainability of the hunt. That's not what this is about. This is about, really, it's I think a lot of it is the urban rural divide, if you want to call it that, and ballot box the politics, and when you are making decisions, based on emotion or based on an election platform, I think that they're not robust decisions. They don't have rigor, and I think that kind of whims come and go.
So, Scott, what do you think would change that decision in your optimism to reopen? Is it that the bears will eventually encroach on human, populations, and as you say, they're starting to expand?
I mean, if you can talk to the biologists, we had some fantastic large carnivore biologists, and millions of dollars of data, and I think that we had really good work done and understood grizzly bear densities and range and habitat needs and diet, et cetera, and we had a really good handle on the harvest, really controlled since 1976. On average, 350 bears are killed, typically split 1/3 non-resident or guided and 2/3 residents of British Columbia. Maybe this will sound a little blunt, but I really don't think city folks care that a hunter in some remote place gets chewed on. It was pretty tragic when that trapper's wife and baby were killed in the Yukon, and unfortunately, some of the things we heard here is we shouldn't be there. And I don't know how you rationalize that. When I heard that happened, I was physically sick to my stomach, right? And different people process things differently and justify things differently. I do believe that when we, unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is we're going to have non-hunters. Human conflict with bears and have people chewed up really bad or worse, and happen over and over again before the public opinion is going to go, ooh,
there's some danger.
We might have missed this one.
Yeah. There's a total disconnect. You're right, between urban and rural Canada and in America. It's the biggest divide in America right now, and I could literally have 10 more podcasts just on the urban-rural divide of America. But we're seeing it. British Columbia probably has that more so than any other Canadian province that I know of, with this rural-urban divide and mindset. And when people say, well, we shouldn't be there, we shouldn't be in the wilderness, that's where the animals belong, we don't belong there. It's like, look, dude, you live in the concrete jungle, go stay there, Yeah. Man has been traversing into the wilderness for generations, since the beginning of time, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Man is not going to remove itself from the equation, and any thinking outside of that is just idiotic. And I don't know. Anytime you get the general population able to give input and create political pressure on elected officials to make wildlife policy, when those public officials are not wildlife biologists, the wildlife lose. Mm-hmm. They lose every single time.
They lose because it's tough, right? Yeah. You're talking about kind of life and death type of decisions, right?
Yep.
You either have a wolf call, or you wipe out the caribou. You either have to close down a bunch of logging that's going on and keep a bunch of people out. So, whether that's logging or mining or whatever, and then you have to stop recreating in that area to give the caribou a chance. Well, all those things, they're tough decisions. And if you recreate or you work in those areas, and you're potentially going to lose your job, these things are, they're complex and they're emotionally charged and they're difficult. And I'm one of those guys that believe, I live in White Rock, British Columbia, and if you want to talk about stuff going on in White Rock, I'm happy to talk to you. And I got a pretty good idea about, the trains and the schools and the community and the issues and what we need. But if we're talking about other places, whether that be Atlin or Told River or, Fernie or Cranbrook, I'm not the guy. And there, and even in downtown Vancouver, I don't know what their issues are down there. One-way streets drive me crazy, but I'm not living in that every day, and I don't care, and I'm not the guy to talk to. So I'm not sure. Everyone's allowed their own opinion, but everyone's not allowed their own facts. Yeah. And
science-based decisions are critical.
And sometimes I think that when we are talking about something, not only hunting of grizzly bears. The emotions get so wound up here that people have trouble separating fact from fiction.
Yes. Yeah, you hit that right on the money, and they believe every meme they got sent. And if I see one more Paul Nicklin photograph and opinion on Instagram, I want to choke him out over this grizzly bear situation. But
how do you get the decision makers to understand the science and the facts versus the emotion? Like, how do you get through to that? That's the big
you have to
challenge.
Get through to their voter base. That's the end of the story.
No, well, I guess that is, you can't because they know. So I mean, I actually like our premier, but he was the guy that put it in his platform that that he was going to close a grizzly bear hunt, and then he won, and now he's been reelected. And so, a lot of the things that he has in his platform, obviously people like. Mm-hmm. He felt, or his party felt, that closing a grizzly bear hunt, was something that would win him some green votes. Mm-hmm. So they know that it's nothing to do with the harvest. There's nothing to do with the sustainability of the harvest. There's nothing to do with the science around how many bears there are. They know there's lots. That's not what weighed in their decision. Their decision was, could we get the green vote? And if we can, what are the things that would help us get it? And closing the grizzly bear hunt was one of them. And so they did it. And so, how do you reverse that? It's really
fear of losing votes.
A long-term campaign to change public opinion around, wildlife management, and it's
education,
grizzly bears, and everything else.
Yeah, it starts with education. Yeah. We've got to have these discussions with the general public. We need to get the right content in the television programming. And let's face it, a dude that lives in downtown Vancouver that hates hunting and doesn't want grizzly bears killed isn't going to watch Steve's Outdoor Adventures, but he might watch something else that is nature and conservation based. And if we could get that message into that type of television content or into that social media feed, or if we could get a guy, and I go back to Paul Nicklin because he was campaigning hard to end the grizzly bear hunting and wolf hunting and pretty much anything that involves shooting animals. But if we could get the public opinion swayed through a change in the what people see in the media and get their opinions changed, then their voting decisions are going to change. Mm-hmm. And like he's saying, then the premier is going to change his policy. His platform is going to change at that point in time because he knows he can get that vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And so, to be honest, I think the animal rights and sometimes anti-everything crowd, I think they were more united than we were. I think they did a better job than we were.
Yes.
As on that hunting side, I think that we were too divided, and I don't think that we did the right thing. And I don't know who our Miley Cyrus is on our side, but Miley Cyrus was big on the other side, coming up here and doing rallies and dressing up in outfits and all that kind of crap. she doesn't know a damn thing about grizzly bears.
Not one
but,
damn
but
thing.
People will listen to her, and so, and I guess that's one of the GOBC initiatives that we did to try to combat this, and it was right along the lines that you're talking about, Steve, here to start an education piece, is something called Who Cares. And so it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook. We put out, content every week. And if you haven't found it, I encourage you to go there, have a look. It's modeled a little bit after Hug a Hunter, out of Colorado. It's really, we geofence around the urban centers. It's, to be honest, it's not for hunters. It's not for Americans. It's for the voting public here. And it's really around conservation and consumption. So if you shoot something, you're going to eat it. And it's around your community, the benefits to the community, not only employment, but all the benefits, cultural, spiritual, and all the reasons why we hunt. And I think that when we're on those kind of three pillars, hunting is in a pretty strong place. And that's the message we're trying to get out there. So if there's one plug I would put in, search for Who Cares BC, and if anyone can leverage that or learn from that or push that out there, as a guy that's been defending grizzly bear hunting and black bear hunting in I don't know if you call it ground zero or front line or whatever you want to call it, for 13 years, I think that type of messaging is where our community needs to move to.
I agree. Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. You've been a wealth of knowledge, and as things evolve, and as this border situation becomes more clear for us, what we might want to do is have you back on again to have this discussion one more time. Like I said, as things evolve, and hopefully the next time we're recording, you're able to say, hey, it looks like by this time we're going to be able to get this border open. We're going to be able to get back in the field and take people hunting and fishing and just get that border opened up in general, so that we can all get back to doing the things that we love. And hopefully someday you and I can go grizzly bear hunting together up there in Bob Milligan's old area, man. That'd be kind of fun. So,
that'd be really cool. Look forward to that.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Scott, thanks again for joining us, and we'll be in touch soon. Like I said, I'll make sure we send you a link so that you can share this with anybody that needs to hear about the border situation. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve. Really like the opportunity to be on your show.
Got it. Well, thank you very much. So, everybody, we really appreciate you listening to today's podcast. We've got a lot of other great guests coming on in the weeks to come, and future shows are going to, cover more topics like this. We want to educate people on, the caribou populations in the north and hunting situations. Maybe it's the border updates. We're going to be telling some hunting stories. Got some great guys coming on the show. They've got some stories to tell from behind the scenes. And, I really appreciate everybody joining us right here on the Steve's Outdoor Adventures podcast. And we'll see you next time.